Good morning, folks. My name is Dr. Lindsay Hollywood, and I am the manager of the Food and Drink Business Development Centre at Ulster University Business School. And today we're going to talk about health in terms of how shoppers actually talk about health. This is a study that I conducted at Queen's University several years ago, but a lot of the factors still apply today. I conducted another study recently with Safe Food, looking at food promotions across the island of Ireland. And what we noted were similar factors influencing the consumer and the perceived healthiness of their shop. So I just want you to think about, what type of shopper do you relate most to here? Are you the stressed out mum rushing through the aisles, trying to get that chore of the shopping done and everything ticked off the list as your child competes for your attention? Or are you maybe the busy young professional who, after a long day at work, who's still stressed out, is just looking something quick to cook, and maybe you can't even cook before you're heading out on that date for the evening? Or maybe you're at a stage in life where you have time to peruse the aisles and just ponder, what recipe are you going to try tonight for your dinner? Whatever your life stage or your circumstance, when it comes to grocery shopping, we all have good days and bad days, and that impacts on the healthiness of our shop. And that's exactly what I'm going to discuss today, are looking at all those factors that influence that decision and the healthiness of those decisions as we come to do our grocery shop. Now, in terms of the study I'm talking about, this is a wider study. It was a safe food study. Called Good Days, Bad Days, and these were the four broad objectives of the study. Firstly, we sought to identify the factors influencing shopping decisions and strategies and shopping practices used for healthy shopping. We wanted then to conduct a qualitative exploration of the ways in which shoppers made choices in relation to purchasing food, and then identify any relationships between consumers' personal, situational and behavioural factors, those barriers and promoters, influencing the healthy shop. And then finally, we sought to make recommendations on strategies and practices for implementing a healthy food shop. And believe me, that is easier said than done after following all these shoppers around. So what I'm going to talk to you about is this part of this large study today. So as part of the larger study, we incorporated qualitative and quantitative methods. And some of those qualitative methods included an accompanied shop, an in-store experiment, and then we sought to test this at a larger scale through a consumer survey of 1,000 participants across the island of Ireland. But today I just want to drill down and focus right on that accompanied shop. And what I mean by an accompanied shop was me, myself, and another researcher following a shopper around as they do their shop. So just to move on then, how do consumers then talk about health during a shop? Well, health is often cited as one of the many factors influencing our purchasing decision. But why is it important to know how consumers talk about health during the shop? Well, really, if you think about it, how shoppers define health and the way in which they classify foods as healthy or unhealthy can really help offer important insights around that decision-making process. So what do I mean by a healthy shop? Well, despite widespread consumer awareness of what constitutes as healthy eating, when we look to the island of Ireland in terms of Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, we see that the rate of dietary related illnesses continues to rise. And that indicates to us that that knowledge of understanding the Eat Well Guide or the food pyramid does not necessarily translate into actual corresponding behaviour. And in this context, we mean shopping behaviour. The dietary guidelines that consumers might be familiar with in Northern Ireland and the Republic were never specifically constructed to enable consumers to put them into practice when shopping in store. These were constructed based on dietary behaviours. So while consumers may use these guidelines subconsciously, Lobstein and Davies stated that when questioned, consumers usually claim to understand what is healthy or what is not healthy, but they acknowledge confusion around how to actually put these generalized dietary guidelines into practice. And that to me highlights this disconnect between knowing what should be eaten and how to actually achieve this. So there's a lot of evidence around various factors like price, preference, and quality that all influence the healthiness of consumers' food choice. But actually, relatively little is known about how consumers actually perceive the healthiness of their food shop and how they then could go on to embark on a healthy food shop. So what do we mean by a healthy shop? We'll just exploring this a bit further. Before we go into the results of the study, I wanted to say that the supermarket really is a key component in that whole chain of events leading up to actually consuming a product. The supermarket actually contributes to quite a substantial proportion of our diet and the purchases made within that grocery shop. So research to date on the healthiness of shoppers' food selections has predominantly focused on till receipt information used to measure the nutritional content of grocery purchases. And that has been really invaluable information, and it's been really good to understand how healthy that shop has been. But there have been limited studies to actually explore a shopper's rationale behind their food purchase and trying to really understand those triggers or those cues that inform their behaviour. So we wanted to understand that a bit further. And so this study that I'm talking about today aimed to explore consumers' perceptions of a healthy shop, identify barriers to a healthy shop, as well as understand how they even talk about health during their own shop. So this research was conducted in February 2011, and we actually took a total of 100 participants, 50 in Dublin and 50 in Belfast, for this qualitative part of the study. So participants were actually recruited through a market research company, and they were recruited based on certain criteria. So basically they had to be the main household shopper, and also we recruited them based on their level of health consciousness. So we used 4 items on the general health interest scale, and if they scored higher than 16, then they were deemed as high health conscious, and if they scored less than 12, they were deemed as low health conscious. And really why we did this was to see if there were any comparisons or any differences, between these consumers. So as part of this qualitative phase, we are only looking at the accompanied shop today, and the accompanied shop was broken down into 4 core tasks. Firstly, we carried out a pre-shop interview, just really understanding the shopper's mood and what types of products they were going to buy before they went into the store. We then followed this by training them up in the Think Aloud technique, and then we carried out the actual accompanied shop. In terms of that Think Aloud technique, that really was trying to just help the consumer chat about their grocery shop as we moved through the store, so that they didn't feel that we were intruding on their shop in any way. But certainly at points in which they went quiet during their shop, we then prompted them to speak. Then the third part of this study was as they got to the till, we did a post-shop interview. This was a very short interview, but it was just to understand the healthiness of their shop. And then finally, 2 weeks later, we carried out a telephone interview going back through the till receipt to see how they used each item of food that they purchased as well. For this specific, For this specific part of the study, we looked at the accompanied shop and analysed it based on all mentions of health and any kind of derivatives or any I'm just trying to think of it, a different word than derivatives. For the purposes of the accompanied shop, we then use those transcripts and analyze them based on all mentions of health and any other terms that were related to health. For example, maybe participants said things like, it's good for you, it's low in fat, or maybe it's low in sugar. And we took them as intimating, about the healthiness of their food product. In terms of the results then and what we saw within this study, the diagram here really summarizes our overall results under 4 core themes, which I'm going to chat through each one of those in a wee minute here. But ultimately what we're trying to say here is that while shopping, participants as the gatekeepers considered health in relation to actually meeting the needs of others, while at the same time trying to identify this need for self-control in relation to avoiding unhealthy food choices. So what we saw as a result of that was making healthy food choices and avoiding unhealthy choices was something that actually required effort and was actually something very difficult to do. Shoppers often relied on product-based cues or inferences to help them make those healthier choices. And at the same time, the analysis actually revealed that shoppers believed avoidance of unhealthy foods required self-control, often resulting in the avoidance of entire aisles, not just certain products. So perhaps in light of this, the shoppers felt it was difficult to shop healthily and to avoid unhealthy choices, meaning that the experience of a healthy choice is really viewed as this effort. It's an effortful process, and we need to really help support shoppers within that. So we're going to explain some of these things a little further. So just to talk through some of the results then. Being responsible for the needs of others, we looked at these 2 areas as the important role of the gatekeeper and risk versus benefit. And as I talk through this, I want you to take time to read through some of the quotes that the consumers said. But many purchase decisions where health was considered related to the requirements or the preferences of others within that household, where shoppers maybe felt responsible for making the healthy choice. I know several participants mentioned the nutritional composition of food items and the importance of attempting to make their child eat certain types of food just because they are noted for their health benefits. What was interesting here was that many parents considered the risk versus benefit paradigm of choosing a less healthy product and saying that it was justified if it was maybe fortified with certain ingredients like wholesome grains or added vitamins or added minerals. And in one instance, actually, there was a participant that remarked knowingly about the levels of sugar in a type of flavored milk, and I'll not name the brand, but that they felt that it was still a positive thing to purchase that product because ultimately the child was going to be consuming milk as a result. And so she negated the fact that, there was sugar within this product. In terms of being responsible as well for the needs of others, there was this kind of contrasting view that actually ran counter to what I've just talked about there, where shoppers also made reference to health in relation to the purchase of treat items for other members of the household. As gatekeepers, they felt the responsibility was theirs to treat other members of the household and to even treat visitors coming to the household. Often they viewed this as them displaying a certain level of care or maybe to fulfill an agreement to say that they promised a member of the household that they would buy certain treat items. So ultimately what we're saying here is that shoppers felt a duty to choose treat items such as cakes or desserts or luxury foods, and it was rarely an opportunity to be healthy, but rather an opportunity to indulge. The second theme that I'm going to look at here is controlling the self. And this theme was defined by participants who felt the need to control themselves during the shopping process in order to make a healthy choice. So avoiding products perceived to be unhealthy was repeatedly observed throughout all the accompanied shops. Participants often cited this lack of control as the reason to avoid certain food groups or even entire aisles, explaining that they needed to actually avert their attention away from seeing particular items just so that they wouldn't purchase them. So in most cases here, participants felt that they didn't avoid these, if they didn't avoid these foods or these certain food aisles within the store, they would be more likely to binge and overindulge. So this refraining was actually a favoured strategy for many of these participants. So what we see here is that product avoidance was actually directly linked to temptation, as participants remarked that they would just have to walk on by items such as cakes and sweets and desserts and things like that to prevent them from consuming that later on when they got home. So sometimes temptations, though, however, were sometimes justified as contradictory whenever they felt that they needed to celebrate consumers, or sorry, not consumers, visitors coming to the household. So many shoppers, allowed these foods into their basket if they felt they were deemed a treat item. So during the shop, numerous participants purchased treat items with the rationale that they felt deserving of that food if it wasn't considered healthy. So also what they talked about was that it was difficult to be good all the time. So it was standard practice to actually permit these so-called bad items as participants perceived them allowable for maybe weekend eating or just because they need a little boost. So in terms of controlling themselves as well, the purchase of perceived healthier alternatives while avoiding their unhealthy counterparts was another established technique participants utilised in order to control the purchase of unhealthy foods. So through this approach, shoppers felt that they were undertaking healthy behaviours by avoiding these unhealthy products whilst simultaneously purchasing a surrogate item so as not to maybe feel deprived of enjoyment in any way. So often self-control over food purchases was aligned to the self-control over their own diet as well, regarding restraint of certain foods that they chose to that they were choosing to consume. So dieting to lose weight or being weight conscious was mentioned maybe periodically within the findings, and there were certain food items that reflected this. For example, one consumer said, I might get some Jaffa cakes. I'm very weight conscious when it comes to certain things, and they're not high in calories. They're pretty low, so I'm going to get those. In terms of the third theme, healthy choice requires effort. Many healthy food choices didn't come naturally to consumers. In fact, the opposite was found to be true. Healthy choices were always presented as requiring effort. Participants presented a clear picture that effort was required to maybe resist temptation and to try and do the right thing to make those healthier food choices. Participants suggested as well that often there were these internal trade-offs that occurred regularly during the food shop. And these took the form of maybe lack of time versus health, lack of money versus health, and maybe even apathetic behaviour or attitude versus health. Or it could have been actually a combination of all. In terms of time constraint, it was remarked that processed foods such as pizzas and jars of sauces were believed to be handy for quick meals and required very little preparation and cooking. So choosing those items actually took pressure off the shopper when it came to dinner time, and were more conducive to an easier lifestyle among these participants. In regard to money, a number of shoppers noted that unhealthy or treat food, as they called it, was consistently on promotion, tempting them to select foods that they would maybe rather not consume, but do like to consume. They discussed how money-saving items regarding they discussed how a money-saving item, regardless of its nutritional composition, was actually very, very hard to pass up. And just thirdly, in terms of this apathetic behaviour, shoppers indicated as well how selecting healthier items required maybe a more analytical and in-depth decision-making approach. Required them to actually look at the packaging, analyse the nutritional content, and maybe look at those health claims as well. And that all was factored into that decision of whether they chose to do that or not. But really what we found here was that the healthy shop was depicted almost as a mental battle that was frequently lost to all these other factors. And basically trying to do the right thing, was a hard thing to do for many of these shoppers. In terms of the final theme then, using product-based inferences as a guide, in order to make responsible purchases for others and to exercise that self-control, and we've already seen that, this was deemed an effort, but consumers also use cues of healthiness, by using the product and its packaging to help guide their decision-making. So participants regularly use their existing knowledge of the food while shopping and relied on previous experience and familiarity of the brand and the understanding of food to guide their healthy choices. But however, as well, if during the shop, what we did note was that shoppers also looked at certain types of information to help guide their choice as well, whether that's health claims, nutritional labeling, or maybe just even the composition of the food, the ingredients list. But all these factors really did influence the healthiness of their product choice. And a number of participants felt that they were aware of the reported health benefits of certain foods and would have purchased those foods with that in mind as well. Understanding the nutritional composition of foods or believing that they understood it and choosing products based on that information was common practice as well. So food choices were also frequently based on the amount of specific nutrients, for example, whether it was low in fat or reduced salt or low in sugar. They really helped to guide that purchase decision as well. So just moving on then to the next part of the results, and this is where we didn't just look at the transcripts, we looked at the transcripts across all aspects of the qualitative study to reveal how participants perceived the healthiness of their shop. And from the results, we could see here that 42% actually perceived their shop to be quite healthy, 34% said it was unhealthy, and 24% were pretty undecided. They didn't know whether they couldn't judge whether it was healthy or not. But in looking at in analysing this further, we used one of three criteria we noted, that shoppers used one of three criteria to evaluate the perceived healthiness of their shop. Firstly, the majority of participants believed that their shop was healthy if it included a lot of fruit and veg. Some participants felt that buying more chilled and fresh items instead of frozen items and processed goods would actually improve the healthiness of their shop. And in describing their shop, several participants actually perceived the inclusion of specific foods such as seafood, dairy, eggs, orange juice, whole grain breads as contributing to the healthiness of their shop. Second way in which consumers categorised the healthiness of their shop was through the avoidance or the restriction of particular items. For many participants, excluding certain foods such as sweets or high-fat snacks was an indication of achieving this healthy shop. Some of the food items were were avoided, like baked goods like bagels or pastries, or crisps and cakes and breads, and even soft drinks, and maybe even some meats such as sausages. And these were items that they actually specified, saying that they purposely avoided these items, which made their shop then healthier. And the third way in which consumers categorised the healthiness of their shop was through taking a balanced approach between healthy and unhealthy items. Some shoppers said that if they achieved moderation, then they felt that this was a good thing. For example, while some might have bought maybe a pre-made pasta sauce, which they deem maybe as unhealthy, if complemented by chicken and some sort of veg, then they thought that this was then classed as a healthy meal. So they thought that this balance was a good thing. And for the majority of the participants as well, buying healthful foods such as fruit and veg countered their purchase of more unhealthful items such as sugary foods and high-fat snacks. In terms of the perceived barriers to healthy shopping, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but I've given you some quotes as examples of each. But really, we saw two core barriers here impacting on a healthy shop, and that was a lack of self-efficacy in choosing, preparing and cooking healthy food, and conflicting needs when satisfying the self and others. So just in terms of the first one as well, participants discussed their shopping and cooking capabilities and the difficulties they faced when conducting a healthy shop. A number of participants actually felt really challenged to manage their time and their money effectively to shop effectively when they're doing their shop, and then also that impact on how their cooking ability. And they claimed that they didn't know how to choose, prepare and cook healthy foods. So the lack of skill here is what we're really talking about. In terms of this second theme as well, participants discussed how certain needs, like wanting to please family members, meant that healthy shopping was more difficult to achieve when faced with all these multiple demands of different family members. So often, sometimes some participants actually said that they were reluctant then to impose healthy eating on the family. So in terms of a lack of self-efficacy, we meant this in relation to time management, money management, cooking skills, and the ability to choose a healthy option. So these are all core food and cooking skills that are essential to achieving a healthy shop. And I'll give you a little second there to read through some of the key quotes that were identified within the transcripts. In terms of conflicting needs, what we saw here was that shoppers, had this real desire to please and to impress others, but also they had a desire to please themselves, and that their mood was often impacted as they shopped. It depended on their mood, and that resulted in particular items being purchased. They maybe wanted to make themselves feel better, so they were purchasing a less healthy item. So some of the key learnings that we can take from this study just really highlight, we actually didn't see many differences between the high health conscious consumer and the low health conscious consumer. And that really just indicated to us that these difficulties were faced by all shoppers. Every shopper actually struggled to make a healthy purchase. Also what came through here was the real responsibility, the moral responsibility that the gatekeeper felt in providing and provisioning their house in a way that was healthy and meeting the needs of all the members of the household. We saw that differences did exist between what they believed, their health beliefs, and actually their behaviour in the shop. Whereby they've validated the purchase of maybe a less healthy item by buying a more healthy item, So it was buying these products in combination then that gives them that self-licensing, licensing belief. Health was also viewed as a constraint in terms of, they viewed health as a healthy shop as time consuming, costing a lot of money and a lot of effort. So as we can see, healthy choices are difficult to make under supermarket conditions, as there are a lot of factors here at play. So some of the wider recommendations from the study at large was that we really need to help consumers focus on the ability to plan, purchase and prepare healthy meals. And as a result of this study several years back, we have continued research in the area of cooking skills and in the area of healthy food promotions as well. Shoppers we were recommending needed to be in the right frame of mind, so not to go to the shop hungry, stressed or tired, and that might not be possible for some shoppers, but certainly what we were recommending was that it's important to be in that right frame of mind when you go to do a grocery shop. Some of the other evidence that I didn't go into today, but it was important. It was interesting looking at how consumers used a shopping list more as a memory aid rather than as a tool to help encourage a healthy shop. So what we were saying was that we would recommend that you do plan your shop and that you stick to that list. Also, looking at labels can really help build knowledge. And while many shoppers find this really overwhelming and more of an effort, we were recommending that shoppers just maybe looked up maybe one product at a time, every week, and slowly built up their knowledge of different food products. Also, we were recommending that consumers do try and avoid promotional items. They perceived a lot of these promotions as unhealthy. Now, whether that's true or not, that can be revealed in another study that I did. But again, that was just a recommendation as a result of this study. So just to conclude, I think it's really important with this evidence to say that we need to support the consumer by reducing the effort it takes to make the healthy choice the easy choice. So thank you very much for your time. And this presentation was based on these two papers. So for more information, you can go and access the papers.